Hello there, and thank you for joining me today for Sampler Sunday. I'm excited to kick off the week with the Teal Tango collection. Today we'll be exploring the sampler page by creating some mini collages, and then later this week we will be continuing with the Teal Tango collection with Mandala Monday, Floral Wednesday, and Animal Friday, all using the same collection of collage papers. Before we begin, I'd like to review what we did last week, and that is we focused on the Jeweled Leaves collection. The Jeweled Leaves collection, the color palette is yellow through blue, so these are analogous colors on that color palette. We created a mini collage on Sampler Sunday, a mandala collage for Mandala Monday, on Floral Wednesday. We put the pieces together to create a beautiful floral collage. And then on Animal Friday, we had fun exploring different layouts for the frogs. So today what we're going to do is focus on the Teal Tango collection. So I want to pull out that color wheel. So for the Teal Tango collection, we have the analogous colors red, purple, red, orange, and yellow orange. And then across from orange, red, we have a complementary color, blue, green. So we can take a look at what we did last week using these analogous colors. So those are here. And now we're going to use these as well as a complementary color. All right, so let's get started. Here I have my sampler page all printed. This is the Teal Tango collection. And the way I want to explore this today is I'm going to be cutting this in quarters. So I have my paper trimmer. If you don't have a paper trimmer, you can use a pair of large scissors. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this into 4 sections. So now let's take a look at what we have here. And these sections are organized according to how they were made. So these papers here all started with an acrylic painting process. So these I call the painted papers. These ones here are pattern papers, and these all started with hand-drawn sketches. This color palette is darker than this one. So we're looking at these two. This is a lighter value than this. So it's the same patterns, but different values. And then this one has the same patterns as well, but here we have it in a grayscale. So what I want to explore today is taking these and putting these on a 4x4 piece of cardstock. So I already cut out 4 pieces of cardstock. I'm going to move these to the side. I have my Mod Podge and my brush. And then I also have my wet and dry cloth, and I'm working on a silicone mat here. So the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to start with one, so I'll put those aside, is I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. So I'm going to uncap my Mod Podge here. And I've cut a cross in the top of this container so that my brush will stay wet as I'm working. Making sure my hands are clean and dry. And the way I like to use this, or to glue this down, is to coat the collage paper. So I'm going to give it a nice coat. I want this Mod Podge to get into the fibers of the paper. So I'm putting it enough on there so that it soaks in. And what you'll see is that the paper starts curling, and that's what we want. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. I'm going to kind of center it as much as I can. I also have enough Mod Podge on there so that I can slide it to where I want it. just pressing it down. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the last three. The next thing that I want to do is to cut the excess off the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my large pair of scissors. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. We have all these scraps here. And then we have our 4 pieces that have been glued onto the cardstock. So when we're taking a look at each of these, we can look at what's the same within this group and what's different. And for this one, the thing that's same is that they're all painted papers. The thing that's different is that they go across the color palette for the Teal Tango collection. So if we again look at the color wheel, we can see that all the colors from this are represented here. When we take a look at this one here, the similarity is that they're all in the grayscale, but the difference is that they're all different in value. So we have the lighter with the white in the background all the way to the dark with the black in the background. When we're looking at this one, they're all pattern papers within a very similar value. So a very similar lightness, darkness, and the brilliance. So the saturation of the colors are all very brilliant. But they're different in that they, again, represent the different colors within the color palette. This one here, they're all the same because they're very similar in value. So very similar in lightness compared to this one. They're more muted colors. They're lighter, but they're different because they have the different colors within that color palette again. So what we want to do is try to start thinking about how we can make this a little bit more interesting by adding some differences to it. So we have our scraps here, and we can just think about what kind of contrast we want within this piece. And this is pretty interesting here because they're the same colors, but these are light and these are dark. So I kind of like that. Here we have lighter and darker, patterned and painted. Or we could look at this and we have the lighter colors and then the grayscale. This one, of course, is the same thing. So I'm going to play around with that and see how I'd like to, or which one I'd like to add. So when I look at this, painted, patterned, but these are pretty similar in value. So pretty similar in lightness, darkness, with the exception of this one, which is lighter. And this is pretty interesting. So I'm going to just play around and see if I can sort out what I'd like to do here. When I'm looking at this one, again, these are the same colors, but different values. I could flip it to make it a little bit more interesting so that it's not the same colors. The colors are kind of across from each other. Depends on what kind of look I want to go for. I could actually also use the same one but flip it over. So I could do this with this, but flip it. So I'm thinking of something like that, but I also want to look at these little scraps that I cut off each of the edges. So whether or not I want to add these to them. So if I'm going to use this color palette, I'm going to look for those pieces. And if I want to cut out, or if I want to print out another sampler page so that I can use more of the scraps, I could go ahead and do that as well. But let's see what I can do with playing with what I have here. Just playing with how the colors go together, how to create some variety within each of these. And what I think I'm going to do is commit to what I've chosen here, and then I'll play with these little strips there. I have a scrap piece of chipboard here. When I'm doing the smaller strips, I like to use this. It'll keep my silicone mat clean so I don't have to keep on washing it off. This one, if I do it that way, this is light, this is light. I want to flip this over. To have a little bit more contrast there. This one here, as I think about laying it out, I was thinking I was thinking that I want the pinks together, so this going with that. So dark pink, light pink. And then as I'm thinking, this one, this is a lighter color than this, so I want the lighter one to go with the black. So I'm going to flip that over. Okay, so that now I have all of that glued down. I want to cut off any overhang now. Okay, now I want to take a look at what I have here. I'm going to try to uncurl them just by flipping them over. And as they dry, they'll probably flatten out a little bit more. And there are ways to flatten them if they have not. So we'll go over that later. So now I'm going to play around and see if I want to add any of these strips anywhere. And I will gather them here and just see what I come up with. And I'm going to commit to what I have here. So for these small pieces, I'm going to go ahead and add the Mod Podge directly to the surface here and then glue it down. Okay, so I'm going to stop with that for now, and I'm going to just scan them and consider if there's anything else I want to do. Now, if you didn't end up with scraps that you could work with, then of course you could always print out another sampler sheet and then play with that. I have a bunch of scraps from other sheets that when I was practicing, so I may pull those out, or I may just try to limit myself by what I have here, and I'm kind of leaning towards that. So I have some other scraps, deciding if I want to put any of those in there. And I might keep it real simple as I have it now, because I'm going to be adding some other things to the collage. So at this point, what I want to do is to coat the entire surface with the Mod Podge. That's going to seal it, and it's also going to really bring out the brilliance of the paper. You'll see that the color actually really comes out once there's a coat of Mod Podge on there. Okay, so I've gone ahead and coated the top of all of these. I'm just checking. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move all of this aside. I'm going to clean up my workspace. I do want to cap my Mod Podge and my brush to keep those fresh. These are scraps that I could still add if I want. I know they're tiny, but at this point it's worthwhile for me to keep them and just put them aside. So I'm going to clean this up, and then I will be back with the next idea. All right, so I'm back with all of my collages, which are dry now. And what I want to do is pull out some of the fodder and different things that we made last week in week 1 of bundle 1. And one of the things that I did on the monthly journaling and intention setting is to play with fonts with my word of the month. So I have a whole selection here of different fonts for faith. I also have my sheet that I made on Collage Tip Tuesday, which has my word and my intention there. So I did go ahead and cut one out so I could use that. The other thing that I did is I made a copy. I put my journal, my sketching journal, in the printer and just made copies. I've already cut them out, but I made some copies of the sketches that I did last week. So these are the sketches that I did last week, and hopefully you were able to join in on that. And what I did is I cut out some of them, so just along the edges, so I can work with those. In the guided doodling session, we played with mark making and doodles using lines and circles. So there are some ideas if I want to add some doodles to my collage. So I have all these ideas, and what I'm going to do is kind of play around with what I have here. And what I was thinking is to add maybe a sketch or two, and then playing around with my word for the month with the different fonts. So maybe putting those down there. So just playing around. So I'm going to just see what I have here and just come up with ideas. Maybe if I wanted my whole intention, I could put that down there. So let me see what I come up with. If you haven't done these sketches yet, I recommend going back to the Sketch and Doodle Thursday. It's a really fun process where we use plants and just doodle and sketch using those as inspiration. So I'm going to go ahead and play around. Oh, and I did want to mention, even when I'm cutting out these, I end up with interesting shapes along the edges. For example, this came from one of the cutouts. So sometimes even adding these to the collage is an interesting thing that you can do. So I'll play around with what I have, and then I'll come back before I glue them down. I want to jump in here and just let you know that I ended up making a copy of the guided doodling sheet. So one I want to keep for my reference, but the other one I can actually use to cut out some ideas from this. So I'm thinking of, even if I want to use portions of the mandala here, I could do that. So I'm going to cut out some stuff here as well and just see if I want to add it to my collage. I may or may not. And then any of these white sheets that I make, I could add some, like here, I could add some doodles to that as well. But I'm going to just see what I come up with here to see if there's anything that looks interesting. I mean, for instance, this is pretty cool. What an interesting shape that is. So I will play around. And again, this is from the guided doodling session that's on Mondays. It goes along with the Mandala Monday session. I'm going to just cut out those. Okay, so I didn't make that many changes. I played around a little bit. And what I'm going to do, so once I come up with something I like, I find the best thing to do is to take a picture of it so that I can kind of get it back to where I want it. So I think I'll go ahead and do that and then start gluing these down. But as you can see, there's a lot of play that you can do with these. I think I will still glue some of them down on camera. I was actually going to play with the idea of just leaving this as is and just encourage you to continue to play and glue down the shapes. But why don't I go ahead and do this one here? So I don't feel like I do need to take a picture of this one. I'm going to uncap my Mod Podge. And then try to glue these down without moving the other ones. So this piece here is from the guided doodling sheet, as is this one. These two are from my sketches. I'm going to glue this down. And then this one. So this is a little piece from the mandala. And then I'll glue this down. Do a little bit of overlap. And I want that to go close to the top there. And then this last piece. Just fit it in just so. And then the last thing that I like to do is to coat everything again with Mod Podge. Okay, so that I really like. I could, once the Mod Podge is dry, go back and add a little bit of color with my acrylic markers. So once again, we have the color palette, the color wheel for this collection. Let's see if I can find it. Off camera is a little messy over there. So here's my Teal Tango color wheel. And then what I would do is go ahead and collect these colors from my acrylic marker selection. And I actually already did over here. So I may go back and add some more colors, but here's the the magenta, the reds, the orange, the yellow orange, and the teal, as well as black and white. I'm going to go ahead and cap this. So again, anytime I'm done with the Mod Podge, I want to try to remember to cap it so it doesn't dry out. I'm going to scan these, and I'll play with these off camera, and then I will come back to you. And this should be dry as well by then. All right, I'm back, and I completed all 4 of these collages. Now, are they done? I'm not sure. I'll probably set these aside and go back to them, see if I want to add color, add more layers to them. But for today, I'm going to say that I'm done. And I'm just scanning them and just admiring them, seeing what I like. And I'll go over some highlights with you. So this little piece here, this white in the corner, that's from the cutout. And what I decided to do is put the sketch that was from that cutout and bring it down a little bit. So you can see that these lines match up, but I've moved that down. So that's a kind of a cool look there. This shape that I cut from the guided doodling sheet came from there. So we have these 2 shapes that are the same that bounce off of each other, which I like. I also added some strips of the collage paper up there on the white. This is the one that we did together on camera. This one here, I again added the scrap piece of white. I added a couple sketches. My intention here, and then this is from the guided doodling. So if I were to critique this, there's not a lot of overlap. I don't find these are pretty similar, but I'm gonna let that one sit. This one here I wanted to leave just as is at this stage. I may do some more overlapping here, but I wanted you to see what I did there. So the word, this is from the guided doodling. This is my sketch. I laid down 3 different pieces from the scraps of the white from around the sketches. So I laid down this one first, then I put a strip of collage. Then I thought this was an interesting one with it going in and out, and then I decided to add another one there. So this whole little cluster I'm really loving, and I almost feel like it could be done as it is, but I kind of, even if it's not, I want to save it at this stage. So maybe I'll even make a photocopy of this because I want to remember what I did there. So that's what we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this session. I look forward to exploring the Teal Tango collection with you more if you're going to join us for the Mandala Monday, the Floral Wednesday, and Animal Friday. We'll be using the Teal Tango for all of the collections this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in our next session together.